And today we're going to talk about the return on investment if you do everything BIM. And Shivang, we were just talking just before we started. If you ask for BIM as an owner, you should have really high expectations, should you not? That you're going to save a bunch of money, you'll cut construction time by 10%, you'll increase quality, and pink unicorns will turn up on the construction site. That's what happens, isn't it?
No, I would say, when you decide to go BIM, you have to consider a couple of things. Like it's like farming, when you put the seed on the ground, you don't want the fruit to come the next moment. You have to invest. You have to have patience. You have to invest. You have to wait. You have to
I'd love it if the fruit came the next moment. I'd love it. Like if you just put a seed in and suddenly that would be great, would it not? It's like magic.
But that's not realistic, no? That's not realistic.
Right, it's not realistic. You're right. Yeah. So you should set realistic goals.
I would say that BIM benefits or BIM ROI can be divided, like topic of today's discussion, can be divided in three parts. One is short-term benefits, mid-term benefits, and long-term benefits. It cannot be just benefits.
Mm-hmm. So,
Akash, what do you feel?
Well, absolutely. So actually, I think it's rather the opposite. So when you start with BIM, you are not going to see the results probably in the first day. Maybe it's going to be a little bit rough journey in the very beginning, but I think what is really important is to try to find out why you want to do BIM in the first place. Is it because you just heard that BIM is good? Or do you have any kind of ideas, especially with some business reasons behind to do a BIM in your organization or in a project? Because, and we will talk a lot about it, I guess, today, but I have some examples when it works really well on small pilot projects, but how you scale it also. So having a business reason, supporting the idea of implementing BIM, I think that's crucial. But again, starting with it might be a little bit rough as well. So
yeah, we talked about BIM for a purpose in one of the other episodes, but that's a great point. That we shouldn't just start with all of the list of all of the benefits that you could get. You have a business purpose, you have a business that you're running, and therefore what would be advantageous? What are important aspects of the project? Is it that you want a project that is going to be on time? Obviously, everyone would nod, but is that more important than the budget, for example? What are the main aspects that you want to say are your organizational requirements because you run your business based on certain aspects and certain purposes, and therefore we should use those as being the target, the purpose for return on investment. So what's the best place to start? Is this best place for us to talk about short-term or long-term first?
I would say we should talk about short-term first, because it's general tendency that, okay, I am going BIM. What am I going to get tomorrow or day after or next month or after the implementation or whatever? I mean, that is usually people ask us when we go for implementation that, okay, you have 90 days implementation guided program. When will we start getting, benefits of it? When will we start getting project out of it? So let's start from there.
Well, let me put one out there and say that the first thing that generally you will see if you're creating models, and that's the part where it depends on what we call BIM, but if the instant benefits are that you start seeing in three dimensions something that you haven't seen in 3 dimensions before, and that's an aha moment. And whether that's on a computer screen or in virtual reality goggles or something like that, it's pretty quick to get from no BIM to 3D models that you can walk around, visualize, understand. The relationship between rooms and walking around it is actually a very quick benefit you can get.
Absolutely agreed. I think even when you are doing 3D and focusing on the visualization or focusing on the geometry, you still have to understand why you are doing that. It's going to be different if you are doing it for showing a building for your owner and a potential tenant, how it is going to look like. So visualizing for marketing purposes, let's say, or if you want to use it for construction and you want to understand how you can place different assets in the building without them colliding, that's again going to be a different aspect. And I think in general, what I believe in is always define the required minimum. So try to avoid putting everything into your model. That's going to be just an overkill from very many perspectives. And again, in general, I believe in making baby steps to defining kind of your roadmap and what's to be added next to your implementation, to your BIM. It should not be hundreds of miles away, but again, trying to find the minimum, trying to find the baby steps. That's what I believe in.
I tie back to your purpose statement, Akash, that there is quality, cost, and time. And I'm not sure, have you seen this where it's a sign outside of a restaurant where it says you can have it good, but you can have it good and high quality, but you can't have it fast. You can have it high quality and, you know, so it's like these combinations. I'm like, which ones are they? But it's this beautiful thing. It's like a three-legged stool. And unfortunately, you can only have two of those. It's not very easy to do all of those or attack all of those benefits. So maybe that might be the first place to think about starting and think about planning for what your desires are, whether it is you want a higher quality and you want the better coordination, or you want to have a better handle of costs, so therefore you want to attack quantities, or you want to have time-based understanding, so you use the model for 4D simulation or some kind of progressive understanding of how that project goes together. That might be a starting point to understand where the benefits start.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, if we talk from architect's point of view, I mean purely architecture or design point of view, I would say that the first benefit that you start getting probably within a month or month and a half, I mean as soon as your you know, BIM authoring that we discussed in the last episode, as soon as you start BIM authoring, I mean obviously you have to do planning like we discussed already, but as soon as you start doing BIM authoring, the first benefit any design firm will see is having better design decisions, because now you are taking all the decisions not only in 3D, but it's a synchronized manner. You change something in 3D, your drawings update. So you know, as a designer, be it architect, interior designer, or consultant, MEP, or structure, you know that if I'm changing something here in 3D, this is how it is going to affect my floor plans and my sections. So this is like first benefit. Let's not go in the BOQ or information direction. So first benefit you start getting as soon as your authoring is ready.
And then if you start to use the model, what would be, it's difficult to understand the midterm versus the long term, but I think that maybe we should talk about that. It's not a walk in the park to get these benefits. It's good to have goals, and it's great to say, I want to do all of these things with BIM and get those, you know, quality, cost, and time benefits. But you have a lot of training potentially that has to happen first. You have a lot of communication and a lot of agreements that have to be there, multi-party agreements to understand who's doing what, when they're doing it, how much they're doing, etc. So that it's very easy, unfortunately, to see BIM as a natural benefit, but then actually have challenges that you didn't have before BIM. And one of the things that we see teams latch onto is the coordination. So you build a model, you can see it. That's a great first benefit. Maybe the midterm benefits and the first BIM use cases are then coordinating. So if I put a model together, Shivang, you put a model together, and Akash, you put a model together, and then we put them together in the same place, we can start to visualize how they coordinate together. And previously, that was 2D drawings, and we would find out the problems later on. But now we get the chance to put these things together and find out the issues earlier. Now, that's good and bad, because previously we didn't have 17,000 clashes in a report that we had to deal with. So now we've got additional problems that could be opportunities as well.
Absolutely. So we have this. We have these tools for clash detection, for example, and we have in many processes, in many BIM projects, we have the clash detection as kind of a goal, as a use case in its own. But if we look at it from a distance, that's also adding waste to the processes, because Of course, you can find the clashes, and then you will have thousands of clashes and resolve them. And as you resolve one, maybe you are causing three others. So it's not that straightforward. So what is even better if you can think about this process and change the way as you are designing and avoid the clashes as you go. So define where the different systems approximately should go, agree on what goes overhead and above the ceiling and what is the order of these different systems, for example, and everyone should be using their own designated area to avoid the clashes instead of doing clash detections.
So that's a combination of, I think, early planning, creating the 3D models and being able to put them in the same place. But the prior to that is agreeing on the system priority, which then allows you to build the model without clashes and do a clash avoidance workflow rather than a clash detection workflow. And some of those things sound easy to say, less easy to do, and because it's a cross collaboration between multiple teams. And where would you put that one, Akosh? Would it be in the midterm or long term section? How would you get there?
Well, I think it could be midterm. I mean, if we say that in short term we create our own, in midterm we start sharing it with others and collaborating with others. If we do a proper planning to start with, if we do some planning to start with, I think that should be one, maybe a section in our execution plan to designate or have a meeting about the system priority and try to agree on that.
Yep.
Perfect. Sorry, I feel, guys, sorry
Yeah.
to disagree. I feel that having this attitude of clash free or clash preventive starts even before you start modeling. So, this is, to me, this is a short-term benefit. If we plan properly, many times I have seen personally in my 15 years of experience of implementing BIM at various places that people usually don't put a thought. For them, it is like, oh, we have the software, we'll start modeling and we'll start creating quick drawings and quick models. Yes, that is a benefit. But even bigger benefit is if you want to go in this clash preventive kind of workflow scenario, you need to plan. You need to plan about what are your requirements, what you need as an organization, what you need for that project, what you need for that, information set. So all those things are important from day one, rather day zero. I would call it day zero.
Yep. Preventative. So being proactive and understanding. So if you think about, I could start BIM tomorrow without any knowledge and I could just open an application, start building a model. But if I love the example where a light fixture could be modeled by maybe the architect, maybe the lighting engineer, maybe the owner might have their own parts and pieces and objects that they want to, depending on how advanced they are. There might be electrical engineers that do certain things. There might be on-site trades that would model, maybe have the actual fixture that they're going to install. So you end up with 5 people that are putting the light fixture in the model at different points in time. And if you do that, there's a huge amount of waste that Akosh mentioned about waste there. So how can you plan those requirements? Who is going to put the light fixture in, and whether it's the actual object or whether it's a placeholder until it's decided about what the object is, and how that can then coordinate with others. So it might be that the owner just takes a 2D plan and puts a cross or something in the room plans to say where they want the light fixtures. And then at some point, it's agreed that the architect, because you need to coordinate the ceiling heights and everything else, they need to put the lighting in. And because maybe the owner wants to be able to walk through that building to be able to check the feel and use the VR experience to be able to understand whether it's what they want or not, maybe that has to be part of the experience and the lumens has to be done. So what's the expectation for brightness in that room? And then at a certain point in time, maybe it's the team that's installing and they are responsible for adding, maybe it's only data, maybe it's the actual light fixture, depending on what the purpose of that model ends up being. So planning that out and then making sure that everyone else has their own list of elements that they're going to create or systems they're going to create and how much they're going to create. that's a big task. So how would you start to recommend to do that, especially on the short term? I agree that it's something you should definitely do to start before you start modeling, but it sounds like something that requires a more understanding of the BIM workflow and multi-company agreement. Any tips on that, either of you?
Well, as I mentioned, I believe in or setting the minimum requirements and trying to avoid over delivering and over modeling and creating too much information. Because in your example as well, in the very early schematic design phases, you don't know too much about the light fixture. You just know that it's a room, so you will need one, but you don't know too much. So I wouldn't go as far as going into any of the existing object libraries to grab an element and put it there, because it's just going to have way too much information which are not based on decision. It's not relevant to the project, but by default it's there. So it's going to be misleading later down the road. So instead of that, finding out the steps, what kind of decisions have to be made in order to end up with the final product that you are going to install. So finding these steps, which might help you finding or defining the purposes of why you are creating the model, because it's one thing that you want to have a representation of the element or a location of that element, but you might want to use that later on for counting how many of these you will have to order, or maybe later on you will want to use it for operations and maintenance and replacement of these elements. So these are all different kind of uses of what you can use the object for. So finding these out, creating just a list of these different use cases and steps in the projects, maybe that could be the first thing to do.
Yeah, correct. But then, I mean, I feel that we are not coming to the point in a black and white that when can someone expect the short-term benefit. I mean, from your experiences, what do you feel? How many days or how many weeks we can talk that, okay, I mean, we just have to tell our audience that, okay, this is like realistic timeline that by this time you will start seeing the benefit. So can you tell me by what time? I mean, I have my ideas. I'll share last. I want both of you to share first your ideas.
So
and then while explaining this, you can also just give introduction once again, that how many years you have spent in this BIM thing, so they will have some fair idea.
So over 20 years, and the timeline is obviously dependent on how much you want to achieve and how much education on using BIM and how many mistakes you've made in the past, maybe. And that might be for the mid to long term benefits, but the short term benefits, I think that we can make it almost instantaneous as long as the teams that are using BIM already have used it in the past. So it depends on the type of persona as well. If I'm an owner, I love the example where I sat with an owner and they said, so after this presentation, they said, you're telling me that actually what I should do is request the use of this workflow on my project, and because it's going to save so much time and money, I should actually ask for a discount because I'm asking people to put this process in place. and I love that kind of, that idea of, yes, I do think if everyone is doing this, if everyone's collaborating, if everyone's got a plan and following it, then you can get amazing benefits. But the timeline to get there, I think that the huge obstacle in it is the amount of experience that the teams have, and it's how much you're shooting for, whether it's mid and long-term benefits. And it's sometimes easy to overreach on the expectation, over promise, and under deliver. So my recommendation would be to focus on those short-term benefits and get the quick wins as soon as possible, and not promise the earth. Try to do your best for the right promises rather than setting too higher expectations. So a few days if you set the right expectations and you have the right team.
I completely agree. I think it's depending on what you want to do. And because in our industry there is so much waste, so now talking about physical waste or wasted hours and wasted manpower and money, so there is so much that even with the smallest goals that you are setting, I believe that you are also going to realize some return on your investment, even with the short-term goals. So yeah, I agree. Not trying to do everything at once. I guess that's what I'm echoing anyway. So trying to find the first steps, the first short-term use cases, and just go for that.
Yeah, in my experience, I can be very specific, and I have enough evidence to prove it on the record. That are, I mean, there are users who have switched to BIM and they have said it on camera. They have accepted that within first 6 months they started getting the first benefit, that is control on their designs. Like for me as an architect and with my experience of around 18 years, to me the first BIM benefits you will see in short term is taking right design decisions, or having control on your design decisions. And what Clive said, I would slightly disagree here, that never ask, owners to ask for discount, because for designers the effort is same. It's design effort. BIM does not help us to design, so it is design effort. It helps us to take design decisions, but it is not helping us to, it is not designing on behalf of a designer. So the first benefit is all the stakeholders who are designers. For them, it is the short-term benefit within the span of, I mean, let's say first when you do pilot project with a guided approach, yes, you will see it within 2 months or 3 months, the design decision benefit. But when you are on your own, within 6 months, you will start seeing the design benefits. 6 months of the day one from where you started. So I would say that shortest what you can expect on your own is 180 days, and with a guided approach, I mean, when the guided approach is there for a pilot project, I think it starts appearing within 45 to 60 days. That's like short-term benefit.
So I think that you highlight there on who's getting the benefit as well. And I agree, owners expecting suddenly a huge discount when they are the ones driving the change, and the teams that they're asking to do certain workflows that they haven't done before doesn't seem like it would be a value add to the owner as much, because it's a lot of change. And as we know, our industry doesn't love change, and the change usually costs money. So if you're an owner, how would you get benefits versus how would you get benefits as an architect versus contractor versus engineers, etc.? And I think that owners, it's not necessarily saying, I want you to do this, but it's more about, I want to select teams that are self-qualified, or they are highly qualified. They've done this before. And so I am likely to get a better result, and it is not going to cost me more money. So how would you do that? I would say that a couple of ways. One is having a quality checking process on who you're bringing on. I'm sure a lot of people have that in their supply chains. But another one is to have an understanding of who is certified in certain workflows and processes and things that are related. And that might be, as an owner, I'm only going to select companies that are ISO 19650 certified, because it is the international standard that teams are working towards. And along with helping themselves, it helps the integration between other parties to have an improved workflow. So some qualification process by an owner, and some maybe because you're certified, might be another opportunity to know that you're going to get benefits, rather than be the guinea pig on the project by just saying, I want some BIM, and the team is maybe just learning on your project rather than providing you value. Akash, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having this standard is definitely going to have the industry to start speaking the same language in the end. So we used to have great ideas, templates, and best practices, but over the past 30 years that has gone into a BIM, it went to very many different directions. In many cases, we see that actually the same effort was done in bubbles in different places, and then we have just colliding approaches, for example. So simplifying that through ISO, or there are some great organizations who are helping in standardization and bringing also some trainings. That's definitely something that helps you, if you are an owner, to objectively choose and select who you want to work with.
And getting benefits, thinking about the different types of benefits, you always come to what's the return on me getting my money back, and how am I actually going to benefit? If you think about how we do that generally, this is what it would have cost, this is what it did cost, and therefore whatever I spent on it, I can do the multiple and understand what my return on my initial cost was, my initial investment. And it's more difficult sometimes for us to evaluate that in a BIM perspective. So if you think about, there's a bunch of different benefits, and one of them I think that a lot of people see is the number of issues that are captured early on rather than them going to site. And a lot of teams are evaluating how much an issue or a request for information on site would cost, how much delay, how much time, how much additional time involved, and people's cost involved. And then they multiply that by the number of times that they have maybe found an issue, a clash or something like that. And then there's a big number. Can you talk, Shivang, about that? Like, how would you start to evaluate what that?
Yeah, I would say that is what exactly what I meant by short-term benefit. Taking better design decisions. That includes all these things. Like, you take a better design decisions that, okay, if I do this, it is going to, clash with my consultant's work. Let's say there is a duct going on there, or there is going to be a structural challenge if I want to do this, explore this. So it is like a short-term benefit. And other part of that, what you said is, converting it to money, like real, being a tangible, that, okay, this is the cost I have paid to go BIM, switch BIM, or train my team, or in the softwares or the hardwares. And then this is my takeaway. We have a very classic case study on this. We did this 3 years back, when one of our clients came online on an online, like this kind of podcast kind of a thing, but it was more than a podcast. It was during COVID time. So we did this event. We do this BIM meets events. So where we invite all those who are on BIM and we let them talk. We just, as a moderator, what I do is I just put a point and let them talk. So at that time, we interviewed 5 users, and then there is this one user, very, very particular, Beyond Design. They are in Mumbai. They have a very good story. They have actually told this on camera, and the recordings are available, that first design decision, having control on design decision happened within 180 days. Second, whatever investment they did in hardware, software, and training and implementation and consultancy and all those things, they see that they were able to recover within 3 years. So that is midterm. And today, you all will be surprised, they are doing paperless construction. And it's been 6 years since they shifted to BIM. So I think this gives a very fair idea that when can you expect what out of it. So let's say first is better design decisions within 180 days. Then, your return on investment on your hardware, software, and training and soft skills within 3 years. And then within 6 years, you are going paperless. And we actually sat and calculated that when they decided to go paperless, they are saving more than 10 lakh Indian rupees per project, because that was the amount of prints they used to produce. So that is like hidden benefit, And when I'm saying this, I'm not mentioning, we can discuss this later, but I'm not mentioning that the tendering process is also online. Their checking is also online. Everything is now very streamlined. They have made their own tools for tender specifications.
What, they're not using Planoly?
They are already using Planoly. Akosh knows them. Knows them.
Yeah, they are a customer. Yeah, okay, yeah. So when you talk about these examples, I think a lot of them are related to architects. What about we've talked about owners. What about contractors? So how does what types of contracting benefits are there, or what types of benefits for a contractor that's wanting obviously a better design that you're saying is coming from the more informed decisions early on, but what are they using the model for? How can they get more certainty on the cost, on the time frame? What are those types of things?
Yeah, so I have example that one of the contractors who worked with this firm Beyond Design Architects and Consultant, that contractor worked with another architect also who is also on BIM, and that contractor started telling them that these guys send us a model which can be viewed on mobile device, and the drawings are also there in a BIM experience kind of environment. Why are you not giving it? So, and I have experience of training the contractors also, how to look at the model, how to extract the information, how to see the drawings, how to see everything in a linked kind of environment. So I have experience of training the contractors. And if I tell you that, the guy who is actually working with the plywood on the site, he has mobile device on his hand, and then he is seeing everything in 3D, all the details, zooming in, trying to understand. So this is another benefit to contractors. And I have example of MEP consultant also. One of the MEP consultant also shifted to BIM. And now, I mean, they are like, we don't know if we can ever go back to our usual 2D kind of workflow.
Yep. Gosh, what else from a contractor's perspective?
In my experience, actually, the contractors are the ones who are driving BIM adoption in many of the projects and organizations, if you can say like that. But I think many things are happening on site which BIM can help those guys with. Just starting with the first, I mean, coordination, for example, and creating coordinated documents and avoiding these problems. But I didn't say my experience. Unfortunately, it goes back way too many years now, around, I don't know, 20-ish years. And I was working with small firms, really just a couple of people. They were on site and they were using BIM, for example, for procurement processes. And of course, it speeded up their procurement, being able to order the right material in the right time. Or I was working with larger firms as well, and realizing ahead of schedule deliveries, realizing millions of dollars saved in very simple services, actually, which was in many cases focusing on the geometry and making sure that everything is going to fit on site and there are not going to be any reworks like that. But of course, then we can go further and going into calculations, procurement, and using the locations in the right way, making sure that you are not moving material more than needed to. So there are very many advanced uses of information. And again, if I want to go back to what I said earlier, I think it's really important to find out what you want to use BIM for. And it's also important that it's not the BIM person who should find it out. It should be the business that defines what do they need, what do they feel like there is a room for improvement in that certain process step. Because with BIM, we can do anything pretty much. So it's then maybe in the first place, it's a pilot project. Maybe we have to glue different tools together to make it work. It's another thing how we are going to scale that, but we can make it happen. But if you give it to the BIM guy to do that, they will be lost in the huge amount of information that they can handle. So it should be the business that defines what is actually value add. And if trying to answer your question, if it's construction, if it's contractors, I believe they know well enough where they can improve and they can define such use cases.
Sometimes that's difficult, isn't it, to say, and I think maybe there's a missing list of questions that might be quite useful for all of these teams, which kind of open up, because so let me put a bit of background. If you ask an owner, would you like your project to be cheaper and higher quality? I think they would say yes. But if you ask them, would you like the design teams to do this and this and this with the model? I mean, they don't really know, or it's not something that they can prescribe, or they should be picking, as I mentioned earlier, the teams that are doing these things anyway. So it's about just picking better quality, higher, more knowledgeable teams and more experienced teams. So how if you think about asking the right questions or getting to the right uses or getting to the benefits for each of these teams, and you mentioned, they know what they do. So is it a case of just listing all of the processes that they have today? So in a contractor's eyes, it's, I've got pre-construction, and in pre-construction, I work out what the cost is, and I do a plan for the site, and make sure that the logistics planning is accurate. Each one of those things, each one of those processes, they should think about how they can apply BIM, how they can apply parts of the better information management workflows on each one of those processes. Like, how would you recommend, Shivang, you got any ideas as like how would they start to, if they're, how am I trying to get to? I'm trying to say that it's easy to say, I know what I do, I know what BIM can do, but putting the two together is sometimes not as obvious. Any thoughts there? Any advice there of how teams can start to do that?
First of all, they should define responsibility. So what I feel is majority of the times the responsibility matrix is not very clearly defined, or what, in other words, if we go by ISO terms, what I would call is project information requirement. PIR is usually not defined, and because PIR is not defined, so what they do is everyone start doing everything. So I have seen that sometimes the architect starting to put information which should be put by structural consultant or the MEP consultant. Sometimes structural consultant start to put information which is architect's responsibility. So this responsibility matrix, because see, earlier it was very clear. I mean, in 2D CAD kind of a scenario, I call it dumb CAD though. Dumb CAD flatland is what I call it. So in dumb CAD flatland scenario, it was very clear. Architect will just draw lines which will represent walls and doors and windows and da, 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 it's over. And then structural consultant will add columns and beams and it's over. And then MEP guy will just do some MEP. But buildings are not that simple anymore. Buildings are complex. They are acting more like human body these days, If a surgeon is doing surgery on human body and his focus is just bone or bones or skeleton, he still have to understand where the veins are going, where the nerves are going, where the tissues are going, how to cut the skin, how many layers needs to be cut. So similarly for building also, I always equate building with human body. So for buildings also, it has to be very clear amongst all the consultants where his work starts. Like if a higher level surgery is going on, and there is another reason. My sister is a doctor. My brother-in-law is also a doctor. So if a higher level surgery is going, they have a very clear defined SOPs. They have very clear defined roles and responsibilities, that anesthetician will come and do the anesthesia. Then he will sit in the corner. Then someone else will come. Then someone else will go and sit in the corner. Then the next person will come. This is how surgeries are performed. I mean, I don't know. Probably you guys as a patient, when we go, we don't know. But I have seen it as a third person point of view. It is a very, very process-oriented thing. A surgery is a very process-oriented thing. And it's like the patient is sleeping there, but the consultants are on a conveyor belt. There's a conveyor belt system. Yeah, so this is how we have to define BIM processes. I mean, like a conveyor belt. Similarly, building will be there. Building is not moving. Your consultants have to be on conveyor belt. Yep. So next. So you are on conveyor belt now.
I love it. Yeah. So now I'm thinking of the plumbing in a building and the doctor that deals with the person's plumbing. That's my
yeah exactly.
So Akash, if you're thinking about return on investment, what metrics can you use in order to be able to see and realize benefits by numbers? Like what sort of things can you do to show those values?
Yeah, I guess there are some obvious ones maybe to start with those. I mean, measuring time and man hours saved. If we talk about construction site, for example, that's absolutely something that can be measured. Of course, there's a little bit of trick there, because if you do it right, if you do BIM right, you are avoiding lots of issues happening. So it's really hard to measure a theoretical scenario with an actual scenario and try to find out what is the difference. But I was involved in projects where they created a construction schedule, for example, with a number of crews, let's say 2 crews, 4 people each crew, and the total duration of installation. And with the right approaches, we managed to cut down to have only 1 crew and even delivered earlier. So it's an obvious winning there, which of course then has cascading effects of even earlier delivering a huge portion, or if not the entire building, but also money saved, obviously. So those are easy metrics. And tying to your previous question about how to define the use cases, it sometimes is good if you have some external pressure, some kind of new aspects that have never been there before, like the increasing need of being environmentally conscious and reducing waste on construction site. So that's a new challenge that we are facing at every places, and that is putting pressure on construction sites, for example, and contractors to achieve a waste reduction, and that's a huge opportunity for BIM. And that's again another metric. So we know traditionally how much waste is being generated by trades, and now you can measure against it how successful your BIM processes are and how much waste you are generating after being BIM applied on a project.
Yeah, so guys, sorry to interrupt. Yeah. I have a question. Traditionally, what is the waste being generated? Can you tell me the number roughly?
Well, it's not one construction site, and it's not the total construction site weight. I'm pretty sure there are some statistics on that. Maybe it is different how statistics are being collected regionally and what those numbers are regionally. But when it comes to some trade and disciplines, we do have those metrics. And so talking about, for example, gypsum, I know that drywalling typically generates above 20, close to 30% waste on a construction site, which we can reduce below 5. So there are huge savings that we can realize.
Yeah, because we again have a client who confirmed on stage in front of 100 plus architects that they could reduce their wastage from 12% to 3%. So this is another benchmark that I have witnessed.
Yeah, the labor waste. So people that have to do something twice or wait for somebody to finish before they start the next location, that is at 30%. And I think that the minimum on metrics for material waste is 10%. So if you think that everything that comes to the site, and you may as well leave 10% of it at the gate and throw it in the dumpster straight away, that seems a bit ridiculous, and that's the minimum. I think there's a huge set of metrics that are easy to find and some that are really difficult to uncover. And we hear, so if you're planning a project and you've done it before, then when you do it using new tools like Plannerly, you can make a comparison. So we have teams that say, I save 90% of my time when I create my contracts and agreements using Plannerly. And that's a great, we make it a lot quicker with what we call smart fields and make it a lot more streamlined. But there's also the added benefit of additional collaboration and agreements that are in place. And how do you work out what that return on investment is? How do you work out that you've actually got a better contract, something that is much more likely to be not just agreed to, but also delivered. And therefore, all of the other benefits that come from that, they're really difficult to measure. So the undefined benefits, I think this is what we search for all the time. And this is why we know once you've done and used BIM workflows on many projects, you start to just inherently know that this is going to be a much better outcome. But putting your finger on and nailing down the exact numbers so that you can help others to come on this journey together, that's sometimes more difficult. And sometimes it's just like showing the passion and showing the examples and the hope that people are going to get there. But how how else, what other ways have you seen, Shivang, that help people to start this journey that aren't necessarily saying, you put €1 dollar pound yen in and you get €3 dollar pound yens out. It's not like that. Rupees are out.
This purely depends on, see, I would say that BIM implementation or going to BIM is actually a top to down approach. If the owner of the company, if the founder of the company, be it design firm or I mean decision maker, if the decision maker, the owner whose money is going to get involved, let's say an architect thinking to come on BIM, so he is the owner. I'm talking from that perspective, not the construction site owner. If the MEP consultant is deciding to come on BIM, so he is the owner. So basically the person whose money, so from whose pocket the money is going out, if that person is clear and that person has some vision, then we can define actually the time of ROI. Usually I have seen that non-clear people talking more about ROI on day one. When people are not clear what they want and how they want, they will ask, when will I get benefit out of this? Those who are clear have made their mind clear, and in fact they would share that, okay, I have done my R&D, I know, I have read enough, I have watched videos, I have gone through blogs, and I know that the first benefit, short-term benefit, is going to be better design decision. The mid-term benefit is going to be better coordination, and the long-term benefit is going to be, from money point of view, money perspective, like real tangible benefit, how much money we are going to save. So those guys actually, in fact, know, and what they are looking for is just a reconfirmation from us as a consultant. Like they have some idea that, okay, I'm ready to invest 1 year, before I see the real benefit. But then if you tell them that, no, we have example, we have case studies where better design decision can be achieved by just 3 months or 6 months, then they'll be happy. But then they say that, okay, I want to have better coordination within 6 months. So then we have to give them realistic thing that you can have a better coordination and collaboration only if your consultants are on BIM. Otherwise, you have to take a call that you are going to superimpose BIM with Flatland 2D CAD, or you are going to model that yourself. So this is my experience in India, that these are the things we have to be very clear in the meeting. Sometimes I do 3-hour-long BIM implementation meetings without even opening my laptop or iPad. And we're just talking this,
Yep. And I think that I love hearing the one where we hear from people that we work with that say teams are happier. And like, how do you
that's the best thing.
How do you put a number on that?
Best thing. When you said, no, I forgot to mention this. When you said that man hours getting wasted, if a labor on the site have to do something twice, or if the labor has to wait for someone else to finish their work, I personally I feel that's a crime. When you waste a man hour, it's the biggest crime in this world. And I also believe in theory of karma, which is like Indian spirituality, which says you do your work, let others do their work. You don't interfere in their work, and you make sure that you are not delaying them to do their work. This is theory of karma. So I mean, we can have another podcast on theory of karma, and I can talk more and you all can listen more.
That sounds great. And I hope that you're paying your the grocery man very regularly based on
regularly. Micro payments. I am doing micro payments.
I love it. Well, this has been fun. I don't know how to close, but I know that we've said a lot about how to strategically plan in order to be able to get those benefits. And I think that there are so many benefits to be had that Akash said it right. Think about your purpose first and think about what is important to your organization. And I think that sometimes you have teams that are doing BIM for other people, and then it's really difficult to measure what the return on investment. And then it becomes, I'm doing BIM simply to win more work from these teams, which can be a return on investment because you win more business. But in the long run, in the medium to long run, you've got to think about what the implementation means for you and your company and what benefits that you can get in your existing processes. So understanding that workflow, there is a lot of people out there that can help you to understand that and to implement that. But I think selfishly you should think about what the return is for you, rather than just being driven to do BIM because somebody else tells you to do it and expecting magical results in the end.
Nicely summarized.
So my closing thoughts, you
Yeah.
need to have clear vision. You need to have clear vision. Why BIM? Why BIM is the most important thing. Why BIM? So clear vision. Second is right kind of tools. So once you define why BIM, then only you can choose right kind of tools to reach or do BIM. And third is, realistic expectations. If you have these three things clear, then yes, BIM has a short-term, mid-term, and long-term ROI or benefits, whatever you call it. But you yourself have to be very clear about it. You cannot have everything in one go.
Yep. Love it. So we're getting really good at these closing podcast summaries.
Yeah. So the way we are not doing everything in one go, no, we are dividing it in 3 seasons and episodes in each season. So you cannot do everything in one go. You cannot expect everything. Rome was never built in a day. So we have to remember this.
I love it.
But yes, I can tell the audience, and I mean, we all can, and you all can confirm, but I can tell you with my experience that yes, there is a confirm ROI. But the first step is your clear vision. And the last step is your clear expectation. In between, yeah, there are tools, techniques, workflows.
Yep. And I would say that maybe in between it's the planning and definition of what you need to do, and then doing what you said you were going to do and checking to make sure. And then if you find out there's any deviation, it's looping that back around, learning from what you've just done and improving it on the next project or the next phase of the project that you're on. So how can you do that? I'm sure we'll talk about more of that in future episodes, but thank you for joining what do we call the podcast now?
Everything BIM.
Everything BIM.
Everything BIM.
I love it. Good to chat with you guys.